All right. Well, today's episode is a special one. We're talking about the idea that it's never too late to take ownership of your health, and a lot of the aches and pains and decline that people chalk up to just getting older might not actually be inevitable. And our guest today is Mimi Morgan, and Mimi's story is incredible. She's a fitness and movement practitioner, survivor, and inspiration who's transformed her health in her late 60s and early 70s through unconventional means. She's documented overcoming severe chronic illness, including Parkinson's, rheumatoid arthritis, stroke, serious infections, ultimately regaining function, strength, and vitality along the way. And she's transitioned and stepped away from medications entirely and now just lives an extremely active life. So, Mimi, we're so excited to have you on here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome, Mimi. So now you're in your 70s, is that correct?
I am. I'm going to be 72 this year.
72.
I know. It's pretty wild.
That is wild. I mean, you look amazing.
Well, thank you.
And I was kind of thinking about that the other day, actually this morning, to be honest with you. I'll be turning 49. And I was like, man, like the older I get, the more excited I am to get to that age. I didn't think I'd ever get to that point, but now I'm like, I can't wait till I get 50. I just want to skip like 49 so I can say, hey, I'm 50 years old.
Yeah, it's good. Actually, it's better than ever. It's really amazing.
Well, and I want to kind of start with something that I hear a lot and it kind of frustrates me. And I wanted to hear your opinion, your thoughts, if you ever hear this. But a lot of people will say things like getting older sucks, or, once you get older, your body just falls apart. I was at the gym the other day and I was holding the door open for someone, and she was she was really slow getting to the door. And she was like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, yeah, take your time. She's like, it just stinks getting older. So, do you hear those kind of comments? And
Well, I hear them all the time. And at one point in my life, I really felt that way. But it's the opposite now. And it's better. I know it's hard to believe, but it really is better than ever. But that's if you have your health, if you have your strength. And we're sort of brainwashed to accept the fact that aging is a downward spiral, and I contend that we are meant to be strong into our 90s and be fit, and that we're supposed to live a life. Our natural state is without disease, so we're supposed to live a healthy life and a life without medication, and really better than ever. And there are a lot of people that are way younger than me that have trouble keeping up with me. I mean, I have a pretty hard pace that I go at, but I do hard things every day, and it really pays off to have that sort of spirit.
so basically, Mimi, you're saying you're a badass at 72,
Yes.
right?
100%.
Yes. I've been called even I have 3 daughters, and they're in their 40s. One I think's 49. I should lose track, but I do until it's a birthday. Yes, and they're like, "Mom, you're a badass," and my grandsons think I'm a badass. I have some good. I pride myself on my shoulders. I actually have a shoulder class that sold out because everybody wants my shoulders. But yeah, and they lift weights. They're in their teens, and yeah, we were comparing muscles, and they're Mimi, you're a badass.
I love
Which
that,
is good.
especially when
It's supposed to be like that. It's much better than, at one point they saw me sitting in a chair with a walker. I could barely move, and they're watching me die. So right now they're just, they're enjoying it. But, this is really how we're supposed to live. It really is. It's really, in some ways I'm headed to the best part of my life, and I've had a lot of great parts of my life.
yeah, I tell you, it's the best when your grandchildren are looking up to you and they see that strength in you and they wanna be more like you, right?
Yeah, it's nice. It really is. It's really nice. Yeah, it's great.
So now you had mentioned you said at one point you were kinda like those people where they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm getting older and, things are going to decline." So what happened? Like, what caused your change in mindset?
Well, really, I faced death, is what changed my mindset. I was uh, active all in my adulthood. I'm accomplished equestrian. I used to lift weights. I'd ride my bike 125 miles a week. And then in my 50s, I got busy with work. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a new career when the girls all went off to college and, got married and did their own things. And, I started really just diving in and doing the whole grind, working 50, 40 hour, 50, 60 hours a week even, and starting to neglect all the things that I was doing before that kept me healthy and vital. And then, 50s menopause hit. Then for some that's hard, sort of downward spiral that can happen with that. And then in my late 50s, so now I'm going, and I had a rough time with menopause. Now I'm not sleeping. So, and you can't live a healthy life without sleeping. Sleep is vital. I don't care what anybody says. It's absolutely vital. And so now I'm barely getting 3 or 4 hours. Now, I had a couple falls, had two surgeries with one of them, developed Dupuytren's, which is typically a man's disease. You develop nodules and you lose the use of your hand. And I'm an artist and I'm right-handed. And of course, it hit me in my right hand. And I had radiation therapy for that. And while I'm getting treatment for that to try to stop losing the use of my hand, the doctor noticed something was not right with me. So I had a lot of neck pain. I had trouble standing. I had trouble with my hands. And she sent me to a rheumatologist and I was diagnosed with arthritis. And so along with that comes a whole slew of medications that added up to 60,000, the long-term prednisone, which prednisone's a miracle drug, but it's also really destructive. The Plaquenil, which was really the easiest one to handle, the methotrexate, which is a cancer drug. And then finally, when you're not in remission, then they put you on the biologics, which are the monthly injections that run about 5,000. And not too soon after that, about a year and a half in through that course, I started to develop neuro problems. I had trouble swinging my arm, my leg was dragging. I developed masking where you lose the expression in your face. I'd get up from the chair and I'd have to sort of steady my move before I could take a step. And then about 6 months into that, my daughters noticed, taking pictures like, Mom, you don't look like you normally look. And I went to a neurologist. They thought I was having seizures and nothing else happened. Then my daughter took me to a movement disorder specialist and they said, we think you have Parkinson's. And they put you on the carbidopa levodopa. I responded pretty well. There's 4 symptoms, and you have to have 3 of them, maybe 5, and you have to have 4. I should know all this. I've forgotten a little bit. And I had all of them. A slight tremor at this point now. I've developed the bradykinesia, which is slowness of movement, and the rigidity. I went on about a year and a half with that. And, typically for Parkinson's, it develops very slow. And I was treated treated and diagnosed by 3 of the top centers. And what happened was, I'm now on, so you can go a couple years without any medication. But I'm now on 1,200 milligrams, which is usually reserved for 8, 10 years advanced stages. A host of other symptoms and problems are developing. Limb dystonia is where your limbs seize up and you can't move. I had night terrors, which is typical Parkinson's disease, where you act out your dreams. I developed insomnia, where I'd go once or twice or sometimes 3 times a month, 3 days without being able to sleep. And really, I had cognitive issues. I had to quit work. I minored in math and I couldn't do 2 and 3-digit division and subtraction. I couldn't put a meal together. I mean, I'm really losing functioning. So, and we're almost wrapping up, because then we'll get to the good part. Uh, oh, it's just really tough. I'm really falling down. At this point now, they think I have a Parkinson's plus issue, which is one of the more aggressive forms, and I was labeled that for 5 years. It's called multiple system atrophy because it's affecting now my autonomic system. But anyway, I'm trying to move along, and moving along was I get dressed, I get showered, and I could fix a meal and maybe walk a half a mile or do something. I mean, that I was tapped out for the day. I'm now on about 13 plus medications and counting. And every time I come across a medication, I'm like, oh, I was on that one too. So it's really plus, plus, plus. And so for Parkinson alone, I'm taking 990 pills every 3 months. And that was just that illness. And I'm now seeing about a team of 10 doctors. But anyway, I have a very loving, supportive family. My son-in-law bought me Apple earbuds so that I could go for a walk and listen to music, hoping to motivate me. because they're watching me fail. And so I did go out. It was a pretty February day, and I decided, "Oh, I'm going to go out and walk." I walked a mile, turned around, and I'm a long-term walker. So, I was able to push myself, and turned around and came back. And when I got back, I realized I'd lost one of my earbuds. So I turned around and went back. Of course, it was at the 1 mile mark when I turned around. And I get home and I've now done 4 miles. It gave me a little wind under my sail. I felt good. Finished getting dinner ready, sat in a little park to enjoy the sun. I mean, it was probably like close to 70 degrees. It was a nice day here. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, so we can get nice weather. And I went to get up to come inside, and I couldn't move. Got dizzy, sat down, tried to get up again. I couldn't. Tried to dial the phone, and I couldn't. And luckily, I was alone in the park. Luckily, two guys I could see out of the corner of my eye, were tying their shoe, getting ready to go for a run. And I was able to call out. And foolishly, I said, "Can you just take me to my place? I think I'm having low blood pressure." And they're like, "No, ma'am." And I said, "No, please just take me." So they go to walk to me to my place, and I didn't get but 10 feet and started to collapse. And it was at that point my left side seized up, and I had had a TIA previously, and I knew I was having a stroke. And I was able to mumble stroke. And I got to the hospital probably within 20 minutes. It was pretty fast. And I'm passed out, but this is what I hear, that I was rushed immediately. I had a medium-sized stroke, was in the hospital for a number of days, was released, and I fared actually pretty well through the stroke. I mean, it was pretty intense. Couldn't speak, lost the whole use of one side of my body completely. And I went home to stay with my daughter and son-in-law. They wanted to just keep an eye on me for the weekend, and I was really tired. And everybody's thinking, well, I mean, I'm sick, so of course that was just one more thing to add a lot. I went to bed, probably slept 18 hours, and asked my daughter to help me up to the restroom, and I passed out. Luckily, she caught me, so I'm rushed back to the hospital. And, I was infected with a deadly bacteria that was on the IV when I was in the ambulance, and it's now bloodborne. It took a long time it took a while for them to figure it out, and I was failing the antibiotics, so I was showing up positive. But I was released from the hospital. They added more antibiotics. I was released 11 days later with a walker and a PICC line with antibiotics because it was pretty bad infection. And unfortunately, nobody said anything, but the antibiotic that failed was the one they sent me home with. And I ended up back in the hospital about 2 weeks later. And I actually walked a mile with my walker. I'm like, I got to do something. And so I'm in the parking lot walking with my walker, and I locked him up and went home and went to take a step to go upstairs to the bedroom, and I couldn't move. Literally, I was locked. And so I called my family. They rushed me to the hospital. Um, and lo and behold, within 24 hours, the infection had spread to my spinal canal, my discs, L2 through 4, and had eaten a lot of the bone. So that's called osteomyelitis discine. It's raging through my body. It's all in my psoas muscle. I have an abscess in my spinal canal. And they're like, "We're not sure if you're even going to survive the night. I'm becoming septic." And I ended up being in the hospital for almost 3 months with a PICC line, and went to rehab for about 3 months, and was sent home with less than a 50% chance of surviving because the bacteria was allowed. It's MRSA at this point, and the bacteria was allowed to seed too long. So I really was sent home with, you're lucky if you make it, and this is your life.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. So sorry you had to go through all that, and it's wild being able to look back on that, I'm sure. I guess what was going through your head in those moments, and what was the moment when you realized something had to change, or what was your mindset as you were going through that or coming out of it?
So I was too, people ask me like, "Were you depressed?" I'm like, I was too sick to be depressed, and I don't want to dismiss depression, and it's something I've experienced in my lifetime. But there's a amount of energy that requires, and I didn't have anything, so I was really just dead. And my future is like really bleak. I mean, they're really like, "You just got a bad deck, and you're just going to have to make the best of it." And I heard a lot of, you're in your 60s, and it just hit you quicker than it's hit other people. And this is just the way it is. And, I bought into it. I was in a lot of pain. I mean, I can't stand to wash my hair. And I was an athlete, so this is like really, you want to talk about ego crushing. I'd have to wedge myself to even put anything in the lower level of the dishwasher. I'm using a walker. I gradually went to a cane, but I couldn't get very far. And this went on for a year and a half. And, every time I'd go see something, if I even uttered another issue was wrong, and I'm really feeling worse, they're just gonna pile another prescription, and I was getting worse by the month. I had a moment at the what I call my mailbox, my 10-step story, and there's this mailbox that I never gave any thought to, and occasionally I get past it, but I hit it one day, and I just looked at it and thought, it was 2 blocks from my house. So I'd get out and I'd walk, a couple blocks trying to, do something. And, I have my cane, I stop at the mailbox, and I think, I don't have it to go on. And I turned around, literally, and my family at this point is thinking, or not thinking, there were already the discussion is we're gonna have to put you in a home. This isn't, this is really becoming worse. So I turned around in absolute defeat, making the conscious decision, I'm gonna let this take me. And I can't stand to see the pain in their eyes. I can't stand to live like this. I have no future. Nobody thinks I'm even going to survive anyway. And this is no way to live. And I'm just going to give into it. And as I turned around, I heard, so you can't do what you want. What can you do? And I stopped and paused. And for me, this was a God moment. And I've lost my faith at this point, totally thinking God's abandoned me. But I hear that and I stop and I scan and, almost kind of smart aleck. And I'm not a smart aleck, but almost kind of smart aleckly is like, I have 10 steps. Like, what is 10 steps going to do? I mean, 10 steps isn't even across a small room. And then I heard, well, then go take them. So I turned around and I took those 10 steps. I went home, didn't think much about it. I got to the same place, the mailbox in 10 steps. And I said, okay, do you have 10 steps more today? And most of the time I did. 10 steps was not that far. I'm like, I can do 10 more. And so I did that. And I kept doing that every day without really understanding what was happening to me. And then shortly after, I had sort of a chance encounter with somebody. I've always been lean. Now I'm immobile. I'm on all this medication. I've gained weight, which is hit my, destroying my spine and making things harder. And so I'm like, I need to lose weight. And I'm thinking I'm going to get a pill, you know, like everybody else is giving me a pill. So why shouldn't this person give me a pill? And he's like, no, you're really sick. And I want you to eat and I'm like, I'm vegetarian, I just, I mean, I don't even buy canned lentils. I like cook my own lentils. And he's like, this is how I want you to eat. And he said, I want you to eat 50% fat, 25 protein, which I wasn't getting. So with Parkinson's medication, protein competes with it. And so therefore you have to limit your amount of protein. And so I was limited to maybe a fistful of chicken because wasn't eating beef. And I said, my medication's not going to work. And he's, well, are you willing to trust me? And at this point, I had nowhere else to go. So I said, yes. So I proceeded to eat like he was doing. Again, I didn't have much hope. People ask me, when did you start to feel better? And, I say, well, 6 months in, I wasn't feeling worse. And that was progress.
Hmm.
So I wasn't feeling worse. And I kept doing my 10 steps every day. And I find myself now craving beef, eating more beef, wanting more fat. Now I'm finding myself around the 9 months mark. And I'm tracking this because, I eat more fat in a day now than I probably did in a year back before all this happened. And I keep my fat macros up high, and I'm getting up to 80%. And that's when I started to notice that my neuro symptoms are improving, and that's when the light bulb went off in my head. And that's where I had a glimmer of hope. And that's about 5 years ago. So it's really not that long because I'm still using aid. I still need wheelchair assistance in the airport 5 years ago. and I'm still on 13 plus medications 5 years ago. So from that 5 years to now, that's a pretty big progress because I am older. But that's when the light bulb went off. That's where I couldn't see where I was going, but I had enough hope that maybe I could, walk a park with somebody, that, maybe I could sit and watch my grandsons do a game. Maybe I could live some little bit of normalcy, and that's where the glimmer of hope. But it took a while for that to happen and get there.
Yeah, I'd love to go back to your God moment, and when you'd
Okay.
mentioned yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So you said
Sure.
you were kinda your faith was diminishing? Did you have strong faith at one point in your
I
life? And
had
then
strong faith, and my family's like, "What happened to you?" "Why don't you go to church?" And I'm like, at this point, I'm really believing God has absolutely no use for me, is really what's running through my mind. Yeah. I mean, I really felt, um, you know, uh, I don't know if it was pride, if I was in too much pain. It was a lot that happened to me fast. So, it's bad enough I have these two life altering issues, the RA and the Parkinson's, but then the stroke, and then, the bacteria now, that's really what's going to kill me. It was, it hit me in a matter of 3 to 4 years. It was just, was a lot to take. It just felt like every time I turned around. So, yeah, at this point, I really lost it. I thought God had no use for me. I mean, I had no use for myself. And it really took being humbled, and taking 10 steps was a real humbling moment for me. I mean, I had to admit how broken I was, that was the best I could do. And I think God works a lot of miracles when we are willing to humble ourselves. And I had to, like, I mean, that was it, and I had to find gratitude for those 10 steps. I had to hold on to it, and, um, so it changed the course of my life, and I find it amazing, like, why pick that moment? Like this mailbox that I walk by every day. But that's, I think for me, it's God how it works in the likes most of, and I've had a few other God experiences in my life. I remember one, I'm sitting on the floor against the wall. Like, I mean, you pick this time to talk to me. But I think, in these kind of everyday moments, if we open ourselves up, things happen. And it was just at the moment I literally had decided, and I wasn't going to kill myself. I just was going to let it take me. Which means it would have taken me. I was just giving up, and I had actually made a conscious decision to do that, and that's when I heard God.
yeah, I think that's awesome. I think you're right. I think a lot of times, like what you mentioned, it humbled yourself, right? I think even if sometimes we'll say and we believe that we have that faith and our trust is completely in Him, sometimes that trust is really relying on ourselves and we're saying it's from him, and so it's like we look back and then he breaks us down and for you it's just one thing after another and you're like, where are you? If it was one thing, you'd probably be like, okay, I got this, I trust you, move on. But it just kept piling on and it finally got to the point where it was just a quiet, non-assuming place, like you said, the mailbox, and he was like, are you listening now?
Yeah,
Here I am. I'm here to take care of you, but you've got to, follow me and have complete faith and trust in me.
yeah, yeah, and I didn't even really realize it at the time. I was just so broken. I just was so self-absorbed in my pain. I just felt so useless. And it took a bit before I was like, well, wait a I mean, I keep going back and doing 10 more steps from this new point. And, it just really, it was my moment of turning things around. And there were times where I'd try to walk a quarter of a mile and I'd maybe get it. And then I couldn't move for 5 days, which is not good. So I've really, I've really gotten to appreciate that the small moments are the moments that really matter. They really are. Those, I could have gotten a mile. And it really was the small moments of 10 steps every day that really changed my heart, changed my mind, gave me hope, made me look at illness and age and recovery, everything different. And so I kept taking them. And in about a year and a half, I'm getting to the point now. So I'm staying in ketosis. I'm staying 75, 80% fat. I'm basically eating beef and maybe 6 other foods that I allowed. I'm feeling better. And now I'm at 2 miles. I mean, I never even dreamed. And it was at that point that and I was faithful to it because, I had a glimmer of hope. And so I was petrified of returning or even going back to the me that was dying. So I didn't deviate from anything. I just stayed the course of this, you know, 10 more steps and eating this meal because I'm now starting to feel better. I'm taking the Parkinson's medication at this point. I'm taking every 3.5 hours from the moment I wake up to function till I go to bed, and often in the middle of the night. And I'm barely functioning. And I'm noticing now at a year and a half that I'm not rushing to take my pills every 3.5 hours. And when Parkinson's medication isn't like you take the medication and you're feeling good and you take the next dose and you're good. It takes an hour for it to work, and you may be riding an hour, hour and a half of functioning, and then you start coming down. I had a lot of off symptoms. I was actually in a clinical trial, and that means when the medication doesn't work. So you come down hard and you're at square one before the next dose works. But I'm noticing I'm not like rushing to take my pills. Which, you could put me in a room without any light, the doors closed, and I could tell you 3.5 hours, like, to the second when it was. I could just feel my body going back to the sick way, and I'm finding that I'm having, like, more time in between, um, so I kept doing everything that was working. A lot of people around me are thinking, "You're nuts, this is what" I'm visiting them for a week, "What can we get you?" It's like, "Buy me 10 pounds of beef." It's like, "Aren't you worried about this heart disease?" I'm like, "You have no idea what's gonna kill me, and it's not gonna be the beef." And, "That's all you want?" I'm like, "Yeah, cook me up a pound of beef, I'll be good." And, it's at that point now, so I've started to eliminate medications. Disease is a group of symptoms that's given a name. And if you don't have the symptoms, eventually, well, then, you don't have the disease. And so, I'm starting to privately, and I always say this, please don't do this at home, kids. Because, I was getting a lot of pushback. I don't I had I had all I could do what I was doing, and I didn't need to fight from people. And so I started to wean myself off of the medications, and the last one was the Parkinson's medication, second to last. So there's one more. So I started to wean myself really slow, and I was doing well. And it took probably close to half a year to get off of 1,200 milligrams. I just kept doing what I was doing, I got off of it, and the very last one was my, antibiotics. So because of the infection, MRSA encapsulates like cancer, it hides in your body, it waits for a time, and they're like, "You have to take antibiotics and hardcore antibiotics for the rest of your life." No bone surgery, no knee replacements, none of this. You just can't fool with it. No cortisone shots, nothing. You'll activate it, and so at this point now, I've been an antibiotic fail. There's very few that I can take, which is why I was in the hospital so long because none of them were working, which means I'm real resistant. And I know like this is really going to be a problem down the road. I've been on antibiotics. I had the PICC line for 3 months and then 3.5 years every day, twice a day of taking this. And I thought, I'm feeling really pretty good. I'm going to take a chance. And I'm really intuitive. I listen to my body. And I just thought, this is going to catch up with me, and this is what's going to take me out. So I went to my infectious disease to talk to him, and he said, absolutely not. And everybody concurs that in 30 days, it's going to come back and you're going to die. You're lucky you're even alive today. And I said, well, I've been off of them for 45, so I guess I'm okay.
That's so awesome.
It is. I did tell my family when I told them the story, they're like, "Wait, you did this without having a conference?" And so I've been off of them for 3 years now. I've been off of all medication for 3.5 years. I take hormone replacement, which I just decided to take this year. I mean, who does that at 71 but me? And I had to say, "Okay, I'm signing my life away. You're not responsible. I need it." And it's been good. I'm just new on it. But that's the only thing. I'm on 0 medication. And about 3.5 years ago, so now I'm skinny as a rail, I'm wasted, I have no muscle. Um, they're like, you have osteopenia, you need to go on medication, you've tanked." Well, of course I've tanked. I've been on all this medication, I've been sick. And so I thought, I'm not going on medication. So I hired a trainer and I started lifting weights. And I chased her around and begged her, and she's 78 years old. I knew I had so many workarounds. I had a list of like, well, we can't do this because I have 2 broken wrists. By the way, I have another curve in my spine. This is wrong and this is wrong. And we worked around it. And, I built a lot. I mean, I leg press 270 and I deadlift 135 and I'm 125 pounds.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
So, and I started with like sometimes no weights and 2 pounds. And I just like my 10 steps, I keep at it. I put it in my calendar and it's in there, and there is nothing short of an emergency. Like, have to be a loved one that needs me because they're in the hospital. I don't cancel my strength training. And and everybody's like, "Well, what do you do? I mean, do you know how old you are? Why are you at the gym 4 days a week?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do know how old I am and I have to catch up." I started when I was 67 and a half. Um, she's like, "Okay, well, you're pretty strong in your child." I'm like, "No, I want to build muscle. We're going to keep going." And it's all paid off. And so now I live this wonderful life, fit and healthy with muscle. And I can move, I get a sofa and 2 chairs and I can take it out of the box and move it. And I can keep up with my family. In fact, they have to keep up with me. And I'm on no medication and life is good. And everybody else around me at this age is on a gazillion medications and complaining and saying it sucks to get old.
I mean, there's so many places I want to start, like, to go. There's just so
And
many,
I'll
like,
be quiet so you can.
no, I mean, your story is fantastic. I've so enjoyed listening to your story. And I think I want to start with going back to, you're starting to feel better and you're doing a lot of things based on a lot of intuition, your gut feeling, what, but I imagine your friends and family are not quite sure things are going to end up well, right? Like I can only imagine that they're going to be a little bit hesitant to be too optimistic because they don't want to be fearful that, oh, you know what, this is just a really nice little period, she's just going to decline further, and they don't want to set themselves up for that. Did you experience that, or did they portray that to you? Or
So yeah, they were very cautious. At this point now, I have a daughter who's a nurse and another one they went to Florida, the daughter and son-in-law that were my advocates, which everybody needs an advocate because we don't even have time for that, but there were like 3 instances I almost died in the hospital. My son-in-law and my daughter both said, "You need to do this." And they literally saved my life a couple times. And so they're in Florida. I didn't want to go. I couldn't take any more change. So thankfully I had a little space so that I did see them, but it wasn't like day to day. So I sort of had that privacy, which was good but yeah, I think that and I got pushback as I started to get well, like, "Okay, aren't you carrying this too far?" And I'm like, "Well, you don't understand. This is what got me well. I'm not going to go back to what made me sick in the first place." And so, yeah, there were moments of that struggle. There were moments when, like, you're carrying this too far. Now this is an extreme. Now this is going to hurt you. They flipped out when they heard I'm taking myself off of this medication. Like, you're not on antibiotics. And, I'm just not telling them that I'm doing this until it was all done. So yeah, it was hard, and it's been they're very supportive and loving, but there have been times that have been hard. They've come around. I think in the last, well, I know in the last 6 months. I saw him Thanksgiving. I was sitting out on the porch having coffee with my son-in-law. I was telling him something I was doing, and he looked up at me and he said, "I'm just so damn proud of you, I could burst." And he said, "I found a picture of you when you were sick." And he said, "I look at you and I think, who is this woman in front of me?" And so they're very supportive now. If I would have discussed with them the path I was doing, I think they would have said, absolutely not. You need to listen to the doctors. And then truth was, I did the opposite of what the doctors told me to do. And that was probably the hardest part, because I'm taking a risk. But it really was just trusting my gut that I needed to do this or I wasn't going to survive. And honestly, I wouldn't be here otherwise.
Well, I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. I think everyone kind of experiences somewhere along their health journey where, and it can totally be from a loving place, but they get a little pushback from family and friends. And I know it comes from different areas. And so it's hard sometimes when everyone's saying, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?" Or like you said, "Why are you going to the gym at this age?" It's not like they're trying to turn you away or try not to be loving towards you, but they're not quite sure what to say, or sometimes it reflects their own insecurities or the things they're not doing, and so I imagine a lot of people relate to that.
Yeah, and I also think there's this thing that, getting, after I mean, seriously, there's this thing after 50, it's downhill. I mean, and probably a little quicker for women after 50 downhill. Men probably get a pass till they're 60. But it's like this is just part of getting older. And so, why are you bothering to do these things? And again, I think our natural state is to be healthy, and I believe that's in our 70s and 80s, and that doesn't mean bad things it doesn't, can't happen, whatever, but our natural state is to be healthy. We're to be fit. We're to challenge our bodies. I mean, I go to bed at night like I'm some 10-year-old little kid that was playing out in the yard, and I'm exhausted. I'm out before my head hits the pillow most nights because I've had a full day. I get a lot of exercise. I distance walk. I walk 18 miles. I work part-time at the senior center. I work just one morning a week. I did that. It started about 4 years ago, and I was sick just to learn a new computer system because, I just like had to show myself that I got my cognition back and could learn something. So I did that. And I have someone say, and I live in near the bridge in Mount Pleasant, but Charleston County, and Sullivan's Island, 7 miles uh, to there, and they're like, "Was that you that I saw walking? Don't you live over there?" And over by the bridge? And I'm like, "Yeah, well, how'd you get home?" I said, "I turned around and walked back." They're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, why shouldn't I be? I'm training to walk 500 miles across Spain right now." And I was like, "Are you nuts?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. We should be doing that. We should be doing that." But the truth is, rather than people being encouraged to do that, they're encouraged to do the opposite, not do hard things, not push yourself. And we're meant for it. Our bodies are really strong and they have an incredible ability to heal. Um, you know, I mean, we just are. We're really, in a lot of ways, miraculous creatures, and we're built for a lot more than we think we are.
Yeah, I love that. Both mentally and physically, I feel like we can
Absolutely.
do so much more than what we think we can one times.
Yes.
And I think we can talk ourselves into it. Sometimes our body believes it. If our mind's like, "I'm 50, I'm 60, I'm 70, I'm going downhill." How do you think your body's going to respond to that? "Oh, I'm going downhill. I'm fragile. I can't handle this."
Yeah. Absolutely interesting. I wrote a post about this. I was down in my family in Palm Beach, and I drove down there. Actually, nobody's there. I was staying alone, and sitting in the car is just brutal for me. Sitting is, so that's another reason I'm active. But anyway, I get there after 7, 8 hours drive, and they've got a nice, like, you know 2.5 mile path, and I'm like, I didn't even bother putting my watch to track my heart rate, and I didn't take my phone. I'm like, I'm just going to go out and walk that and stretch out. and I'm gonna walk it twice because I'm thinking it's a mile. And so I'm walking it and I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm just going to go get 3 miles in. And then when I walked it the next day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. It's 2.3 miles. I just walked almost 7 miles. And the point of it my body could handle it. It was my mind I had to convince. Now, I guarantee you that if I had known it was 2.3 miles after an 8-hour drive, I'm like, there's no way I could do that. And this is when I'm feeling good and fit. I would have talked myself out of it thinking, you can't do that. But here I'm thinking it's a mile. I'm not paying attention to the distance. And then the next day I'm like, I can't believe that I just did that. And I had no clue that I walked, 6.9 miles. And so, yeah, I think a whole lot of it is mental. I'm at 18 miles and I'm going to tell you anything a little bit further than that. And it's all mental at this.
That's so true, and I feel like the biggest barrier a lot of times between us and accomplishing things is ourselves.
Yeah,
Like you said.
absolutely. I could be my own worst enemy really easy.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah.
And I love how too when you had that moment with the mailboxes, like just the 10 steps. 'Cause I feel like a lot of people, they may look at your transformation and be like, "Oh my gosh, like, how did she do it?" Like, she had this miraculous, life-changing transformation, but it started at that place where it's just the 10 steps and, like, you felt so defeated. It felt like the hardest thing in the world at that moment is just the 10 steps. You kept doing it every single day. You kept showing up every day, making those non-negotiables. I think it's so important to highlight, like, it all starts with those small steps. It all starts with that consistency, and then you can build on it from there. So I guess if someone is listening and they're struggling with their own health issues or kinda in that position where you were where things are clients, like, what do you feel matters most for them to start with, or what are, like, the biggest habits that you think can make a difference in their life?
Meet yourself where you are. And that's not always easy, but meet yourself where you are. And I was where I only had 10 steps. And I think that's probably the first time in my life that I ever met myself where I was. I can push, you know. I've got this drive, which is good, but I had nothing. And so I met myself where I was. And that requires seeing really what the state of you are. And I don't care really what you're dealing, whether you're dealing with, it doesn't have to be physical. It would be with something emotional, something spiritual here, whatever aspect it is. If you are honest enough and meet yourself where you are, that's where the miracles happen.
Yeah, that's so good. I feel like that's something I've been leaning into a lot, just, like, giving yourself more grace, especially when you're in those periods where everything feels so heavy and it feels overwhelming, you don't know how to get out of it. Just taking that first next step, and you don't need to know all the next steps, you've gotta take that first one, and things will start to reveal themselves from there.
They do, and I put people are like, "Could you?" I'm like, "No, I still can't." Where I am now, I had no vision. I don't have necessarily a vision of where I'm going to go, and that doesn't mean I don't have dreams and desires. But I've just learned sort of to put my head down and just do the next right thing and do what I need to do to take care of myself to keep my body healthy and vital. And you know, like I said, things can it was real eye-opening. You laid up in a hospital for 2.5 months and you've lost all your muscle. I mean, it took me 10 minutes. Thank goodness I had an iron bed, but it took me 10 minutes to roll over to the other side. And it doesn't take long for somebody over 60 to a trophy. I don't care how fit and how muscle. In 2.5 months, you're in a hospital bed, you've lost it. And so at least if you have some good strength and God forbid something does happen, you have a fighting chance to recover. Plus we're really built to be strong and have muscles. I mean, God gave us muscles. So why shouldn't we actually have and develop our muscles?
Mimi, what would you say to someone who's maybe in their 60s or 70s and just kind of getting into the health journey and, they hear what you're saying, they're like, I'm afraid to go to the weight room side of things with the free weights and lift those heavy weights. Like, I don't know if that's for me. Like, what would you say to someone?
So I would say hire a trainer. It was the best money I spent. And I didn't pick some young hotshot because I knew exactly that I would just and I know you train and I would have trusted you, but it was like, that's all I need. I'm going to be trying to grab something I have no business grabbing. So I picked some woman who's 78 years old who I knew was going to take me slow. And it really was good because, there are times that I needed to be held back. And and I needed somebody to hold me, for that. Somebody who's gonna be a good fit for you. I needed my form watched. I had too many workarounds. We had to solve problems because there were things I couldn't do, but I've got to develop the muscles. Rotation is hard because it's still hard, the spine. So we got to find a way. How can I build my muscles without that then setting me back? So do that. And again, start where you are. And I was at 2 pounds and I was like worn out from that. Trust your body, go slow. And honestly, it's absolutely never too late uh, at all. And just, I've since then, so I have so I'm a certified trainer and I work with Parkinson's people. And, one of the blessings is I'm a really one-on-one person and I offer these classes and I'm like, what am I doing? Group classes, I do Zoom. This isn't my genre here. And I absolutely love it. But and most of the women are over 60. There's some maybe 50 in case any of them are watching. But that's my specialty. And the thing is like they're getting in 4 weeks' time, I'm like, is that a muscle I'm seeing? And they're like, yeah. And they're amazed. They're like, where is this happening? And they're on fire now because they're feeling alive. And it's important. We're supposed to feel like this. This isn't just something set aside for the youth. And it's a different way. I don't know how to explain it. It's a different sort of fire, but we're to have a fire all stages of our life.
Yeah, I love that. And that being said too, I guess, what does your day-to-day look like now? Or I know you said you don't necessarily have, like, a set vision for the future, but it's like, what do you want that to look like, or what are you aiming for now? I know you mentioned this big walk across Spain too, so walk us through kinda, like, what the
Yeah.
next few years look like for you.
So, I really, surrender's a never ending issue. And it's surprising after all I went through. God's like, do we really need this discussion again? But I'm like, yeah, take me through it. Why am I supposed to surrender right now? I probably do that 3 times a week, actually. And it's really funny. I hope God likes my sense of humor because I'm like, run this by me one more time. Okay. Why I'm supposed to let this go because
Right.
so it's really funny. I wasn't building muscle like I wanted. I sort of have a conflict with my trainer who I still use, who I adore. But she's like, 15, 20 reps. I'm like, no, I want to build some real muscle. Like I'm just wearing out and it's not happening. So I'm like, I'm going to get my certification so I can figure out how I can build muscle. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do something with this. And so this just all happened last year. And then I'm like, I'm going to work with people with Parkinson's because I know what it's like. I lived it for 6 years. I lived with a diagnosis on medication. I know exactly what it's like. And exercise is the one given thing that helps them to at least slow the disease. Anyway, so I'm doing all this and, had the cognitive capabilities to put together a website and yeah, granted maybe take me 3 times it would take one of you to, but I powered through. But I do trainings on Zoom. I work with a lot of people with Parkinson's on metabolic health, trying to get them into ketosis. That was absolute key for me. So I do that. I teach classes. I do one-on-one training. And I do that Monday through Friday, probably about 25, 30 hours a week. And I'm going to cap it at that because I don't want to go and get sick. And I also want to enjoy part of life. So I do that. And I train once a week on Saturday and I train really hard. It's more like a 15-15 count, but I just do one set and it's go through a series of 8 or 9 exercises and I do 10 in and 10 out. So I'm almost 30 seconds time under load. And, my head's going to pop off because it's so intense, but I actually seen really good results. And so I do that on Saturday. Since all of this, not only did I find God again, I converted to Catholicism. So my faith's important. I pray the rosary. I go to mass often and I'm really grateful. And I live, spend time with family and have a few friends and I'm by the beach. I go watch the sunrise and, I cook my beef and I have a good life. I've had to postpone my trip because I was having recurrent infections. The MRSA came back a couple times. I haven't totally eradicated it. And I've accept the fact that I may never, but I keep it under control. But I've always wanted to walk across Spain, do this, the Camino trail. And it's funny, and I'll just tell you real quick, I'll say, 'cause interesting story. So I've wanted to do this. My daughter and her husband went to Spain, and I'm sick at this point, and they come home, and she brings me the passport. So you get a passport stamped every town and a shell. Everybody wears a shell around their neck. And she brings it to me, and said, "Here, Mom, maybe this will inspire you." You know, I'm still using a cane, and I'm still on all my medication. And, I still hadn't found my gratitude place. You know, running through my head was this, like, "Why the hell are you bringing me that? I can barely get out of bed." And I'm like, "Well, thank you, dear." And she puts it on the, my lamp across so that I can look at it, and I'm thinking, "Great, so now I'm looking at something that I can't do," another reminder of where my life is. And then, when I got to the point, I thought, "Well, actually, I can do it, and I'm gonna do it, and thanks for hanging the shell."
I love that.
So,
Yeah, that is so awesome. I heard something somewhere, someone said a lot of people fail because they can't see the person that they wanna become.
yeah, 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 yeah. I have a saying that I say a lot, and that is, and I hold on to it still. So, those are my plans, whatever else happens. Um, I've been praying for a husband for 4 years. I'd love to be remarried, something I gave up. And, that may be God's will or not, and I've accepted that. But he's got me, sticking with that prayer. But, I say, so, that's about it for the future. And the rest, it's like, how can I serve you? What can I do? But my saying is, and I really hold on to it, that the woman I'm gonna be in a few years from now is counting on me. So I try each day to do what I need to do so that when I'm 75, the 75-year-old me doesn't look back and think, "Why'd you stop lifting weights for? Why'd you stop doing this?" You know, and how come you didn't take care of me? Because there was a point where I wasn't taking care of me, and I was in a bad predicament. So, and what you just said made me think about that. So I try, take that outlook, and I'm just determined. Look, we are going to die. I don't know when my time is, but I'm just determined to go out, sort of on my physical terms and doing the best, knowing that I lived each moment fully, and I did everything that I needed to do.
Beautifully put. Yeah, I feel like that's what it's all about, and just being in control of your life, not letting your circumstances or your body be in control of what you can and can't do. It's like you hold the power, you get to live life to the fullest and make the most of every moment. I think that's so beautiful. Well, Mimi, you're freaking awesome. Where can
Thank
people
you.
find you? Tell the people where they can connect or follow your journey, especially with your walk coming up.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. It's fun. Uh, Such great young energy you both have. It's nice. So, I'm on X all the time. You can find me there, and it's, Mimi K. Morgan. I'm on Instagram, and it's Mimi Morgan K. I'm hardly there, but I'm on X like nonstop. You find me there every day. And then my website is just 10moresteps.com.
Awesome. Yeah, we will link all that stuff in the show notes. But
Thank
Mimi, thank
you.
you again so much for coming on and sharing your story and your experience. I know this conversation is going to inspire and resonate with a lot of people. Yeah, everyone who's listening, go follow along with what Mimi's doing. We'll link everything below and send to someone who needs to hear it. So, yeah, again, we appreciate you hopping on and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for having me.